Hello, everyone. I can see we're all just getting set up. As you come in, certainly come on to chat and just say hi. And I'm just double checking. I can't see my own camera anymore. It seems to have disappeared, but just let me know if you can see me okay. Yeah, okay, good. I can see it now. All right. Phew. I've used Zoom so many times, but there's always something. There's always something that we're learning. So it's nice to see everybody. Let me just here. We're going to get started in about 2 minutes. So if you want to come into chat, like I said, just let me know where you're coming here from. That'd be fantastic. I'm actually out of London, Ontario, Canada, and that's about 2 hours northeast of Detroit. So yes, we're having some lovely weather. Yesterday it started off at 55 degrees and ended up at 21 degrees. Is that just that kind of day? Okay. I think people will automatically be filtering in here, but like I said, we're going to get started in about a minute and I'll explain to you a little bit about what I'm going to be talking about. But again, let me just check my chat. Okay, all right, Jacksonville, oh, South Carolina, Colorado, fantastic. Alberta can't, okay, Alberta has London, Ontario beat when it comes to weather. I'll give you that for sure. You guys have been having some fantastic weather there. Down to 73 in Chicago, yes. I'm doing a class on small talk with my ESL students, and that's what we've been talking about, the weather. Canadians always seem to want to complain about the weather, so we've been doing some practice on how to complain about the weather. One of the few things that we can still complain about, and it's all right, for sure. Okay, so by my time, it is 2 o'clock. And I just want to make sure my voice is coming across okay. You can hear and see me. If there's any problems, just come into the chat window and just let me know. So my plan for this session, this workshop, is to get some feedback from you as well. And I'll try to leave time to do that because I know from previous experience that an hour goes by very, very quickly, especially when it comes to talking about a topic such as AI and the impact that AI is having, especially in education, but not only education, it's having an impact on every other aspect of life as we know it, in our, insurance and banking and customer service and government organizations. AI is really been a whole lot more noticeable, as our keynote speaker just mentioned, the last couple of years. Now, there are some reasons for that. All right. So fantastic. Let me get started. Let me see if my clicker is going to work. Sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. All right. Yes, it does. Fantastic. Okay. So my name is Jen Artan. And again, I mentioned I'm out of London, Ontario, Canada. I'm currently a learning support lead at Thames Valley District School Board, again, in Southwestern Ontario, not too far away from Detroit. That's me. Actually, a picture I just took about 10 minutes ago, just in case you forget what I look like. I have been an Avenue.ca mentor. I work with adult learners as well. Oops, people are not able to get in. Let me just make sure everybody can get in. Admit all. Okay. Admit all. Sorry. I'm just getting a message that there's people in the waiting room, and I don't want anybody to be stuck in the waiting room. So my apologies for that. Again, so just some background on me. I work for a school board here in London, Ontario, but I also spent the last 2 years working for an organization called ESL Library. You might have heard of it. If you work in ESL in any capacity, you might have heard of the online publication group company called ESL Library. It's now known as DALL-E. I did that for 2 years. I've also worked in the college sector as a prof at George Brown College. That was fun. I was a communications instructor the year after ChatGPT was released. Yes, that was extremely interesting. Colleges and universities, most educational organizations are so slow to respond to technology. And it's been an interesting last couple of years or year and a half now. So this is just me. This is what I do. And let me go on from there. The clicker's not working, so I'll just use my mouse. Just a note on the images in this presentation, because again, I'm going to be talking about AI augmented storytelling. So the images that you see in this presentation, unless otherwise noted, have all been generated by DALL-E or FreePic. FreePic tends to use DALL-E, but they've also used Midjourney. There's a few other places that I'm going to be talking about, but just as we go through, notice the images. There's a few that I'm going to pause on and comment on as we go through, especially when we talk about some issues like bias, which came up in the keynote. It's a really interesting thing to be looking at right now, especially as the AI companies and organizations really try to correct the bias and correct or detoxify the training data. That's, I think, what is actually officially known as detoxifying the training data, and the steps that they're taking to do that. So interesting considerations there. So what we're going to look at in today's session, oops, there's still people in my waiting room. Let me get people in here. All right. We're going to look at choose your own adventure stories. So we're going to be leveraging ChatGPT and generative AI and generative image tools to create resources for our students. And I'm going to be showing you some examples, as well as pointing out some places where we need to be cautious, and something like, and I'll show you some examples I've been working on, but looking at some pedagogical considerations. I'll talk to you a little bit more about what a choose your own adventure story is. And then we're going to look at, again, some of the tools, the generative AI, the generative text, but also some of the Google tools that make creating these interactive, engaging storylines and story templates so much easier for teachers to do, as well as some practical applications, and hopefully save time for questions and sharing at the end. All right, so let's get started. CYOA, again, we are a place or an institution or organization that loves its acronyms. CYOA means choose your own adventure. Generative AI tools can be used for a lot of other things. I'm just going to focus in and narrow in on this particular topic here. And again, if you do have questions, I will try to respond to them at the end or as we go through. So certainly put your questions in the chat as we go along. So that if you haven't used CYOA or Choose Your Own Adventure Stories before, and you've never heard of them, that's okay. They were very popular in the 70s and 80s, maybe a little bit before that. Lynn, I did too. These were my favorite stories. That and Sweet Valley High and other stories like that. I would love those stories, and I would flip through them to see the different endings. They were fantastic. They were the only kind of, it was something new at the time, and it really got my attention. They were really popular for a while, but then they seemed to kind of fade away, and then came back. There was a resurgence in around 2013, 14, 2015 to 16. We noticed that they came back in style because some of the templates were becoming more available. Tools such as Google Slides, Google Forms made it a little bit easier for teachers to navigate how to create these stories and share the stories with their students. But as with all technologies, they seem to kind of fade away again. So we saw them rise in popularity. Eric Kurtz has got some amazing resources on Choose Your Own Adventure Stories. Sylvia Duckworth, a fellow Canadian, Alice Keeler. There's lots of really great resources that came out about maybe, almost 10 years ago now. Has it been that long, right? So the popularity kind of peaked and rise, but it's coming back again because of generative AI. But just to go back a little bit and look at the pedagogy behind CYOA and why they're such a useful and engaging tool for our students. And again, I work with ESL students. That's my focus here, but they certainly can be used in other areas as well. It's the interactivity. A Choose Your Own Adventure Story offers choices for the reader. The reader chooses one of two pathways or more, and then turns to the page or clicks in this case, and is taken on their own individual narrative, their own individual pathway until they reach a conclusion. Then they can go back to the beginning and try it again. So it offers choices and selections for students. And again, they can be really quite useful and interesting. I remember doing them as a child, and I remember really enjoying the experience as well. Critical thinking, as far as pedagogy goes, it encourages readers to think critically and think about consequences, right? So if I choose this decision or this decision, what is going to happen? What's the most likely or logical consequence? You can explore all these different pathways and problem solving. And again, I work with ESL students, so I've been having a lot of fun just developing stories on focusing in on something as boring as the present simple and the present perfect, or the present continuous, but on the topic of getting to know your community or winter adventures, and really focusing in the grammar and vocabulary, and then having students make the choices and then come back and reflect on them. So there's been some interesting applications for that. There's also some good evidence that these kind of stories encourage empathy and perspective taking, right? You can create diverse characters and situations. Readers, learners can take on different roles. And again, I really like to be able to come back and reflect at the end. So whenever I do one of these stories in my class, one of the final discussion questions is a reflection. Well, what did you learn? What did you do? Retell the story, because not every student shared the same experience. So they have to go back and say, well, I made this decision, then I did this, and this is what happened. So think of the language that we're developing as we retell the story. So it's, again, for the pedagogy, it's just engaging, it's motivating, it tends to capture students' interest in keeping them engaged. Agency and control over the narrative. Again, I teach, I've taught adult learners as well. Adult learners really love having that ability to choose. And I think this is something that really engages them. Creativity and expression. These stories can provide this creative outlet. You can get students to come up with their own ideas as well. And that was what Eric Kurtz and some of the other teachers were doing back in 2015 and 16. Definitely is something you can do, but I'm going to focus on the teacher creating the resource for this particular workshop. So this is what Eric did back in 2015, 2016. Again, with the Google templates, the Google Slides, forms, it made it so much easier to create these resources for our students. But again, the popularity seemed to kind of fade away because it did take some effort on part of the teacher. So if you wanted to create these amazing choose your own adventure stories, it was almost like this, let me see. Yes, this formula, right? Choice one, path two, choice two, and then so on and so forth. It was still possible. It just took a lot of planning in order to be able to do it. But there were some great templates, and I've got some resources available for you in this slide presentation. You can have a look at them as well. But a lot of these great templates now exist. And at the time, you needed to map out your story, right? Again, plan the story, plan the choices, plan the consequences, plan the decisions, and go from there. So logically, it worked best to keep the choices to 2 choices. The more choices you have, the more path and the more pathways you needed to explore. Now, ChatGPT and generative AI tools like Gemini, Bard, or Claude. I'm in Canada, so I can really only access ChatGPT and Gemini. The generative AI can help you create these templates so much quicker. And I can show you how quickly it can create it. And then it's just a matter of the teacher tweaking it and adding or iteratively editing the product. So it is becoming a whole lot easier to do. Generative AI, like we've seen already through our keynote, it can help you generate ideas, right? So in other words, if you're looking to, again, I'm an ESL, so if I want to practice prepositions of place and I would like an interesting, relevant, or creative story that highlights this part of speech, I can ask for an interactive storyline. And we can also use generative AI to create images to go with your storyline. I'm going to show you a few places where you can do that. And again, one of the places that I'm going to show you, you have to be a little careful that it's a true AI image. And in order to do that, you can always do a reverse image search. Microsoft Designer, I don't know if you've heard of that tool. It can provide some really great ideas and images, but I noticed that 2 of the 3 images were true AI, and the 3rd image I got it to produce was actually a Shutterstock image when I did the reverse search. So I'm going to talk about some of that in here. I'm going to show you some examples as we go forward. Okay. All right. So AI and generative text. I like this image here. However, as again, you can see from the image, this is an AI generated image. Generating images is still a work in progress. It's not getting it right. And there's a lot of issues with the images at the moment. And I think one of our hosts said it really well, is that we're still in the early stages of generative AI. It will get better, but right now, the images are often weird, or they're illogical. In this case, I wanted I think it was the monkeys on the typewriter. It was the infinite monkey theorem that I wanted the image to be, an infinite number of monkeys on an infinite number of typewriters would eventually create the entire works of Shakespeare. Well, it got the monkeys right, but the typewriters are backwards. And interestingly enough, not sure what that bottle of glue is doing on the desk. Who knows why? I did it again, and then it had one monkey that had a bottle of beer on the desk beside it. I'm like, what is it thinking? Where is it getting these images from? But again, these are some of the things we need to look at. So this definition's already come up today, and that comes, there's a link to where the source of this definition comes from, and I'll provide that in my resources. So ChatGPT is a generative pre-trained transformer artificial natural language processing tool. And it was released in November 2022. The paid version came out just a few months later. So ChatGPT effectively mimics human speech. It can produce texts in any genre and on any topic: marketing plans, poems, music, lyrics, speeches, codes, pretty much anything you can think of. ChatGPT can reproduce it. It has trained on extensive amounts of data. The reason we're seeing so much of it today is because computing power has finally caught up to theory. So we've had these ideas. These ideas have been floating around for years, but we've just never had the computers the size of warehouses to process the data and to be able to do this. I mean, we've had predictive texting. Remember when predictive texting came out on our phones, right? That was about 10 years ago, maybe a bit more. Predictive texting, you choose the next word on your phone and, you can just respond. However, in predictive texting, if you just keep choosing the middle word, eventually it sort of wanders off into gibberish. It doesn't really make sense because it doesn't think that far ahead. With the advances in technology, in transformer technology, in computing power, and a whole lot of money going into the development of these resources, ChatGPT can think so much farther ahead. And it's just amazing. And this is why suddenly today we can see such a much more sophisticated ability than we had in the past. It reached 100 million users, as Ryan mentioned earlier, in like 5 days or 2 months or something like that. And that's just because ChatGPT, it is a tool that is fairly simple to use, and its perceived usefulness is high. Users that engage in the tool don't have to spend a whole lot of time trying to figure it out. When a tool is overly complicated, it loses people. But that's not the case with ChatGPT. You need an account for the OpenAI version. But after you set up the account, it's fairly straightforward. And I'm going to show you what it looks like in just a moment. ChatGPT, you'll hear me referring to, but it's not the only generative LLM available. Google Gemini, formerly known as Bard, you might have heard of Anthropic's Claude. These companies are all basically doing the same sort of thing. They're just competitors. Anthropic was actually a breakoff group from OpenAI. There's a group of people that left OpenAI and created their own company, and thus they have Claude. I'm in Canada. I can't actually access Claude. It's we don't have access yet because of some of our privacy laws that are happening here in Canada. But we didn't actually used to have access to Bard either. But for some reason, we can now access Gemini. And that's really interesting, and I'm just exploring that. But for today, I'm going to be looking mostly at ChatGPT. So we're going to take a look. I mentioned that ChatGPT exploded in popularity. And again, it's because it is super simple to use. I'll take you to the live site in just a moment, but you've probably been there. If you haven't, it looks like this. ChatGPT 3.5 is the basic dashboard. On the far left-hand side is your chat history, where you can go back and revisit old prompts and look at other information that you had interacted with. Right in the middle of the screen, there are often prompt suggestions. So if you're looking for how to phrase something, you've got some suggestions right in the middle. And the field to enter your prompt, which is number 3, it's just right on the middle of the screen towards the bottom. You enter your prompt and it will give you your response right away. There's also a speaking function. You have a mic access. And again, I work with ESL students. So sometimes we engage in the mic when we ask questions in class. And it's been really interesting, the kinds of questions the students will ask. I don't know if you know Terry Fox, but Terry Fox is a big hero here in Canada. And we had our students interact with ChatGPT as Terry Fox. So we prompted ChatGPT to take on the role of Terry Fox and respond to student questions. And it did a pretty good job, because what ChatGPT did was it would go through its extensive database, everything it knows about Terry Fox, all the news items or news articles and stories that have been written about Terry Fox that it might have had access to, and do its very best to respond as Terry Fox might potentially respond. So again, you have to be careful with getting things right and data. Is it true? But, my ESL students were focusing on questions like, where are you from? And tell me about your life. And he was famous for his cancer marathon of hope. So the students would ask questions like, how much money did you raise? And what kind of cancer did you have? So it was an interesting use that we were able to do with the mic access. You'll notice here on the side, I have Mia. Mia Access was a plug-in feature that was free, but I got grandfathered into it. It's now behind a paywall. Mia is just another way to interact with chat. It just makes it a little bit easier. So if you don't have the paid version, you might not see access to Mia. So I won't say too much about that. Okay, so you also have access to ChatGPT 4.0. Now you might have realized, or you might have heard, that the 4.0 is the paid version. Well, we all know Microsoft has a pretty big investment in OpenAI. So if you go to bing.com, you don't even need the Edge toolbar, although it works better in Edge. If you go to bing.com and you go to Copilot, it will allow you access to 4.0, and you don't actually need an account to try it out. And it is a little bit different from, okay, the question, yes. So yes, you don't need to have the account. You don't need to be logged in to try it out. Copilot is 4.0 is connected to live information and to the internet, whereas 3.5 is not. So sometimes you might be interacting with chat 3.5. It will tell you that its data is limited to January of 2022. Like, for example, if you asked chat 3.5, who is Taylor Swift's boyfriend? It's not going to know because its training data is limited to January of 2022. But if you ask the 4.0 that same question, it's going to know the answer. So there are some advantages to using Copilot, and there's a few other too. There's something called temperature control. Now, since I'm going to be talking about AI augmented storytelling, temperature control is an important piece here. I'm going to show you what that looks like. Temperature control in 4.0 allows the user to adjust how creative or how precise you want the output to be. So if you want it to be way more creative and interesting and lots of colorful adjectives, then you can choose purple, which means more creative. Blue is more balanced and is a mid-range between creative and precise. More precise is that turquoise color. The lowest temperature is called, and it's more focused, deterministic, safer, and more predictable. One way to see the difference, and I recommend just trying it out just to see, is to go to bing.com and go to Copilot, choose more creative, and just ask the question, why did the chicken cross the road? And just to see what the output is. Then change the temperature control. You go to a new chat, you choose more precise, and ask the same question. And you'll see how it responds differently to that prompt. So it's an interesting experiment, again, which I'm going to show a bit more of in just a moment. Our keynote also talked about this effective prompts, but so did the first presentation I went to today. I think it was, who was that? Not Laurel. Mary Nelson had some really great information on effective prompting. Prompting is a skill, certainly, that the more you do it, the better you become. And it's you become, like I said, once you get into the hang of it, you develop this skill. So one of the things to do to improve your prompting is to tell ChatGPT what it is that you want, give an overview, and say, I want to create a CYOA or choose your own adventure story for my ESL students who are, and give the age or the English language level, right? Tell them why you want it, exactly how you want it, the purpose, in order to practice a particular skill, in order to demonstrate knowledge of, and give it the topic that you want it to develop it for. A little bit like improv theater, a little bit, for sure. In this case, for CYO prompts, explain what a CYO adventure story is. That's usually the first thing I do. In chat, I said, this is what a CYO adventure is. It is a kind of interactive story where the user has choices. And then explain your learning objective, what you want, the theme, the language, who you want it for. And I usually give it limits. I say, give 2 choices for each potential situation. If you have an example of a storyline that you've done that works really well, that you've gone through chat a few times, you've made those iterative changes, and you finally got the story worked out, it's a really good idea to copy and paste it. And then you can stick that into chat and say, based on this format, please create another choose your own adventure story on the topic of, and then you can change the topic. So maybe you had it on winter activities. right? And I'll share my winter activities, choose your own adventure story in a moment. But you know, you had choices, you had examples, you had, you know, whatever it is that you had, a language focus. And if you plug that into chat, it will follow the same kind of theme and produce a new story with new ideas. So it's really useful that way. In this case, here's one of my examples. I said to chat, I would like you to help me create a choose your own adventure story on the theme of a St. Patrick's Day celebration. It is for, so I have to make sure to put my audience in there. It is for newcomer ESL high school students who might never have heard of the celebration before. Create a story that outlines a social interaction celebration, offer choices, and provide an overall explanation at the end. So that's the theme that I plugged into it. And I'm going to show you what that looks like. Oops. I'm going to show you my story here. All right. Oh, you see all my rough work around the edges too. So let me see if I can just zip this in. So this entire story, and I removed my name from it because I have to attribute chat in here if I'm going to share it. This is St. Patrick's Day. Everything in here is AI generated, and I've just gone over and reviewed some of the material and made some adjustments. So it starts off with choose your own adventure, and this is a Google slide template that's set up in the standard paper size. Now, I chose standard paper size because if I wanted to print it off for my students, it's a regular paper size, and they could, you know, draw on it and annotate it if they wanted to. But we have Google Classroom as well, so my students could use this in their Google Classroom. So they click on the shamrock. There's some instructions right here. And again, all of these images are AI images created by DALL-E or FreePic. And it starts off, and again, a standard choose your own adventure story starts off with a general introduction and a situation or something the student has to work out. In this case, you find yourself in a bustling city. And for ESL students, as a teacher, I would probably have them with a notebook and paper and say, copy down 10 words that are new to you as you read, because I want to go over the vocabulary as well. So here it starts off with an introduction. Click here to continue. So you just click here to continue. And here's your first set of choices. Okay, so in this case, we're actually going to go off in 3 different pathways. The first pathway, which is hidden under my Zoom thing here, a parade. Do I join a parade? Or my second one is, do I explore the market? Or number 3, do I attend a cultural workshop? What do we want to do? I don't know. I'm going to ask you. Today, everybody, do you feel like a parade, a market, or a cultural workshop? What do you think? I'll take the first suggestion that I see in the chat. The market. Okay, so we're going to go into the market. So I'm going to click here, and then we're going to see explore the market. So we're looking through the market. It has a description. And again, the description is generated by chat. I went in and edited some of the text. I made it bold, some of the words that I think my students might need to learn a little bit more. So you wander through the market, admiring the colorful decorations. Notice how it's told in that the second person tense, and it's like, you know, I really like how this story ended up. So will you stop and you spot a fortune teller offering to, I wasn't really sure how fortune tellers related to St. Patrick's Day, but that was a suggestion, so I went with it. I might edit that if I were to write it up again. But are you going to have your fortune told or continue? All right, it's your choice. Fortune teller, let's go there. Okay, click here. You sit down with the fortune teller who reads your fortune with a mysterious smile. She tells you that great luck and fortune are on your side. You leave feeling excited about the possibilities that lie ahead. And then you go on to the story, and then it comes to kind of a conclusion. There's not a whole lot of pathways, but they can go back to the story and do it again. And the last page, everybody lands on the last page together as it explains what is St. Patrick's Day, what is usually happening over St. Patrick's Day, and more. So if you want to start all over again, you can go back to the beginning. So again, the students can go through this as many times as they want. Again, come back to the story. Maybe I'm going to join the parade. Okay, there's something to do with a hat. Am I going to take the hat or decline the hat? Oh no, what happens if I decline? I'm going to decline the hat. I decline the hat, right? But I feel a little bit left out. Everybody has on these hats. I have a good time, but maybe next time I'll wear the hat, right? Tom is saying, I love the idea of having students construct. Yes, students can do this as well, for sure. But again, all these different, anyway, so let me just exit out of there. So that was just one story I had them create. And again, the students, especially my students that, and it was based on, we have a whole holiday wall in our school with all these decorations on it. And my students and I were walking down the hall a couple of weeks, or last week, because we decorate really early at our school. And my one student said, "What is that?" and pointed to one of these St. Patrick's Day decorations. And the other student said, "I think it's a monkey." And I said, "Okay, let's talk about this holiday." So it prompted me to do a little bit more on that. So just some cautions on using ChatGPT to generate text for you. Think about where the training data actually comes from. When ChatGPT is training its model, it uses tools, and again, the large language models don't do the web scraping themselves, from what I've heard, but they do use web scraped data. So web scraped data is just vast, huge amounts of data from the internet, including books and articles and more, with the idea and the purpose to learn the patterns and nuances of human language. So the focus is not to be a plagiarism and copyright machine, which contrary to what Noam Chomsky thinks, but the purpose is to learn how humans speak. And that's why some of the current lawsuits are not going through. I think Sarah Silverman just lost hers recently, or it's being appealed or something like that. But based on fair use. Okay. This extensive data, and again, the data is so massive today that Chat is able to do these amazing stories and reports, and it's able to sound very conversational when you have that conversation. It's very deferential. But as we know, and as Ryan already pointed out, there are some issues with the data. Pre-trained models are sometimes biased, for sure. We've seen it. We know that there are gender, sexual, and racial biases in the data. And this comes out in ChatGPT if you ask it to create a story. One of the stories we did with the ESL students was about daily routines in your household, right? And I had it generate a story about, what does a family do every day to get ready for school and work? And it ascribed, a certain role to the father figure, a certain role to the mother figure, and so on. And it didn't, and I read it over. I was like, oh, okay, this is, looks like it comes out of Leave It to Beaver, right? So there definitely are some biases in there. So just be very careful what you're using when you use ChatGPT. Now, I just wanted to pause for a moment and just look at this image that you see in front of you. What do you notice about the image that DALL-E created for me here? Tom, all dudes. Yes, Tom, you nailed it. And my prompt was actually this. Please create a picture of computer scientists reviewing training data. That was it. That was my whole prompt. So ChatGPT, or in this case, DALL-E, the image generator, went through its database and it said, okay, so computer scientists, who's a computer scientist? Well, the two at the front look, they could be brothers, but dude, a little bit of ethnic diversity, that looks good. But I don't know. You can see it's fairly homogeneous and maybe not not representative. So that is one thing we definitely need to be a little bit aware of, or more aware of when we use it. Other issues with text generation coming from ChatGPT. ChatGPT will not generate harmful or negative content. I mean, that's not an issue. That's a good thing. It shouldn't be allowed to generate gory horror show type content because it's been worked into its training data. So reinforcement learning with human feedback, humans actually go over some of this material that it's text generation, it's large language network, large language LLMs are generating. If content is harmful, certain words will trigger alerts, and you'll get the message that this request violates safety standards and parameters. So, for example, tell a joke about a woman. I'm going to come back to that in a moment, but notice the sign. If you're using DALL-E or any of the image generators, that they frequently make spelling mistakes. So they don't often spell things correctly. So be careful of that. The joke example, this one makes me shake my head because I just entered this. So this has not been addressed yet. Look at my first prompt. Can you write a joke about a woman? Now, Chat responds and says, as an AI developed by OpenAI, I adhere to ethical guidelines that discourage the creation of content that could perpetuate stereotypes or offend individuals based on their gender, race, ethnicity, religion, or other characteristics. Therefore, I'm unable to fulfill your request for a joke about a woman. However, I can certainly offer a wide range of other humorous topics or genres for a joke if you're interested. Now look at my next prompt. Okay, can you tell a joke about a man? It responds, of course, here's a lighthearted joke. Why don't scientists trust atoms? Because they make up everything. Okay, joke aside, what do you notice about that response? Does anybody want to comment on Chat's response here? That's okay. I'll tell you my thoughts here. I asked it to make a joke about a man, right? Women can't be scientists. You know what? You know it's there again. That bias is inherent in here and it's built in. So there are some issues with text generation for sure. Forbidden content on ChatGPT. Well, yes, it didn't warn you. Yes, it just went ahead. Text generation, it won't do hate speech and discrimination, which is good, illicit or gratuitous, illegal activities, harmful behavior, plagiarism, or copyright. So if you wanted to create a choose your own adventure story based on Harry Potter, for example, it won't do it. It will say, I'm sorry, that violates copyright. I'm not going to do it. However, if you say something along the lines of, a boy wizard at a school in the UK that does this, then it might actually generate that for you. This is often called jailbreaking. So users try to get around and get Chat to generate content that it really shouldn't. But that's generally what you're going to get. The other issue with some of the text, you've probably heard of the concept of hallucinations, that Chat will make things up. When it comes to creative writing, that's okay. We want it to make things up. But if you're thinking that it's a good research paper, it's going to generate citations or whatnot for you, that could be a problem. Let me just go through this. I'm looking at my time. Works of fiction, no problem. But again, it will create, if you ask it to generate a research paper with citations, some of them might be real, some of them might be fake. It also has issues of logic. So for example, look at this question that I posed to Chat. You can do the same thing unless it's fixed itself already. It takes 3 towels, 3 hours to dry on a clothesline. How long does it take 4 towels to dry? Show your work. Any guesses what the answer is? I'll give you a hint. It's not as straightforward as it seems. Okay. I full disclosure, Tom, I had the same answer initially until I thought about it. 1 towel, 2 towels, 10 towels. The sun is the sun. It's going to dry them all at exactly the same rate, right? So it's going to take 3 hours, no matter how many towels you actually put out there. But ChatGPT did the same thing, right? Chat didn't. Chat provided this particular mathematical formula and cross multiply, solve for this, and divide it 4 hours, right? And it, even when I told it was wrong, it apologized, but it still continued to give me this wrong answer. So there are some issues. And with text generation, who's responsible for it if we share it? Of course, we are the humans. When it first came out in March of last year, Stephen Schwartz thought ChatGPT was a search engine, and he used it to cite cases in his court case. Didn't realize it was making things up until it was too late. So if we share it, we're responsible for it. So pictures, I know I'm running out of time. Let me get into this. The image generators are so much fun right now. There's a few places you can go for free image generators. On your Bing toolbar, all you have to do again is go to bing.com and bing.com, go to images, and you for this one you need an account, but for some of them most of them you need an account. Padlet, there's a few others as well. Here, it will land you on, if you're looking for Microsoft Creator, and this is the image creator that Copilot has, you can save collections, you can create collections here, and when you, and also you can get to the 4.0 via chat. It's called Copilot now. It's a slightly older picture. So this is called Image Creator, and if you can't remember how to get there, just do a Google search for it, and it will take you here. You have a number of free versions per day. If you see 0 tokens on the toolbar at the top, it's because you're not logged in. Log in, create an account, and then you get your tokens and you can create images per day. So the Edge works best, but you don't need the Edge to use it. Again, 15 freebies per day. And again, your prompt is everything. So if you're looking for images to your story or for something you're doing with your students, this one will usually generate 4 images based on your prompt, and it saves your images for you as well, which is good because they take up a lot of space if you're trying to save them. One of the triggers or safety alerts is adult, the word adult. If you're looking for adults to be in your story, don't say adult, say people in their 40s or people in their 50s, because it will come up with a warning and it'll say, I'm sorry, this violates our safety procedures or protocols, and it won't produce it. Okay. The free version has limitations. If you want to create recurring characters of people, it won't let you do it. I haven't found a free version that does this very well at all. Paid versions will allow you to create characters. So there's something to that, like Mid-Journey, Stable Diffusion. Some of those paid versions will let you do that. You can share your creation, or share it to a collection, and it stays on your site. Customize takes you to Microsoft Designer, where you can remove background and do other things to your images, which is really useful. So this is what a collection of images ends up looking like. And again, I tried to make my images as diverse as possible, but I have to put in those prompts to use them that way. Freepik.com also gives you 20 free images per day, and it's realistic. And I do believe they use DALL-E, but I've seen some Mid-Journey in here as well. So you'll see that the images are a little bit more gritty and more realistic, whereas the DALL-E images seem to have that Sims-like quality to them. But of course, the bias is far more evident in generated images. If you look at the images that you see in front of you, and our keynote talked a bit about this as well, the image on the top, the prompt was a group of prisoners working on a project outside. So the other one, it's Freepik, freepik.com. I do have resources, but I'll put that Freepik, Freepik.com. And they're usually run on the same kind of engine. So there's engines like Midjourney, Stable Diffusion. I think FreePic uses DALL-E, but it might use other versions, like other kinds of generating software for sure. Midjourney, yep. So you can see the bias in these images. Look in the middle. This prompt was a group of doctors in a typical hospital emergency room. Again, yes, Stable Diffusion as well. And a pair of house cleaners. So you can definitely see that bias. So be careful. The other thing with the images is that DALL-E especially, they have a lot of difficulty with hands. Sometimes the hands, that's the easiest way you can tell if an image is fake or not, is to look at the hands. I don't even know where this third hand is coming from, but it definitely showed up here for some reason in this prompt. And my prompt was a group of colleagues at a conference greeting each other, photorealistic. Again, I didn't say diverse and I didn't say include women, and it didn't. It's not very diverse, and I don't see any women in here at all. So again, bias is still an issue. The hands, the hands, the hands. Oh, the hands. I've tried many other places. It just doesn't get the fingers right. It just won't for some reason. And again, the other parts of the faces look good and they look very humanistic, but they throw in an extra finger. This lady with the purse has an extra finger. I was trying to show different medicinal ingredients, and I don't know where these fingers came from. I wanted to show a person writing at a desk, and this strange hand appears up on the other side of the screen, like was it The Thing and the Addams Family? It just shows up. So definitely it has a lot of problems getting hands correct, but also feet. Trying to generate images of feet, it's still working on it. Again, remember, we are in the early stages of generative AI, generative text, and generative images, instant horror stories. Yeah, how many toes do we see here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 toes for sure. It's just really interesting and scary. Watch your spelling, because remember, generative AI is a people pleaser. It wants to please you. If you ask for something but you misspell it, it's going to try to figure out what it is it thinks you mean. In this case, I wanted a diverse student working at her computer, and I misspelled the word diverse. I didn't include the E. So I get a diver student working at her computer. So interesting. I don't know why somebody might want a student dressed as a diver working at her computer, but my AI tool said, if this is what my human wants, this is what my human is going to get. The other things and challenges that we have in generating images is that, again, remember, it's the training data that it's pulling these images and ideas from. I wanted it to generate a photorealistic plate on top of a fork, right? For the most part, we see cutlery on top of plates, but I want to reverse that. I want to flip the script and ask for a plate on top of a fork. It couldn't do it. And it couldn't do it because when it consults this huge database, it doesn't see what I'm asking it to do, or it's so rare and so small that it thinks that that's not what I mean. So it's really difficult here. And these are different versions. This is DALL-E. This is through the Microsoft Bing toolbar. This is the FreePic version at the bottom. It's giving me nothing like what I'm asking for. And FreePic offered up this weird creme brulee with broccoli for some reason. So again, it tries to figure it out. Padlet actually now has a free generative AI image in its system. If you use Padlet, you now have access, which is really cool. And it actually came closest to generating what I wanted, which was a photorealistic plate on top of a fork, but it did get the cutlery a little bit off. Well, actually a lot off. It still didn't do exactly what I wanted it to do. So it does have some struggles. It works for other prompts as well. I wanted a banana holding a monkey. maybe a person dressed up like a banana, it wouldn't do it. It just could not come up with that idea. So there are some limitations to these tools. We know what's happening lately with Google's Gemini. Gemini had a photo AI image generator. It had to pull it because it was creating historically inaccurate or offensive images. And there's a lot going on behind the scenes, behind the scenes right now. We're going to see some improvements on that as well. Google just released this statement that says, we're aware Google Gemini is offering some inaccuracies, such as it was not good. So they're trying to fix what went wrong last week. Again, this is Padlet. Padlet, you can just click on that 3 dot and click on I can draw, and it will generate all these AI images for you, which you can then save. In this case, it's not a bad job. In fact, I actually like it. And you can save these images. Just you put your prompt in and you hit enter, and then you can right click and save your images and use your images in the story as well. And very useful stuff. As far as AI images go, copyright and attribution, we can't copyright AI generated text because it's not created by humans, at least not yet. I know the US has its own law. It ruled on that recently, but Canada's in the same place for now. And as far as attribution, OpenAI's terms of use says that we may not represent that output was human generated when it was not. So interesting on that. And some examples. Again, here's some other examples of some AI stories I've created. St. Patrick's Day, I've done a winter wonderland adventure story where my students decide, do they want a nice peaceful winter retreat where they can hike in the woods and take pictures of the wildlife, or go skiing and tobogganing or other things like that. And then I had a more advanced story for my other ESL group, which are actually adult learners, about issues with neighbors. You know, if you have a problem with a neighbor, in this case, it was garbage in the common area in an apartment, and some choices and actions that you could potentially do. And yes, and I'm aware of my time. I know I'm coming up to the end of the time, and I do want to just jump to the end and see if I have some time for questions here. But just some takeaways here. It's all about the prompt. If you want your text to be diverse, make sure you tell your text to be diverse and inclusive, but also give an example of what you mean. When you say you want diverse and inclusive text, say, this is what I mean by diverse and inclusive text. Do you understand? And again, it's like we're training the models continuously. And that's a useful practice. Having an example of something that works good for you, and then putting that, copy and pasting that example into chat, this will help generate results that are closer to what you're looking for. So I don't have to read anything here. When I'm creating my stories, I usually do images last. So I put it all in my template, and then I make sure that all the pathways are connected. And again, ChatGPT can tell you what slides they need to be on, and then I can create the images last. And again, remember, AI struggles with fingers and hands. They make spelling mistakes, and they don't always understand idioms. For example, I wanted a picture of a person on a pathway coming to an intersection where there's a fork in the road. And this is my fork in the road. I should have been a little bit more clear in this case, but yes, this is it. So I am just going to pause it for now because we're coming up to the end of the session. Lots of creative ideas, lots of things you can do with chat, and it's super quick to generate these stories. If you've got a good template set up in Google Slides, it's just a matter of getting it in there, copying and pasting it. The St. Patrick's Day story took me like less than an hour to create, for sure. And then my students can use it and more. All right. Excellent. Okay. So again, I just wanted to say thank you for coming out to my session. It might be, let me read some of the comments. It might be fun to have the discussion with, yes, Lynn. So it's talking about when the images are produced and the images are off or weird. especially when it doesn't get the idioms right in an English class. I can have this picture like the one you see here. You know, what do you think is the problem? What do you think is the issue? Or even with the ones with the hands, you know, where do you see the issues in this particular image? Or with the bias, what do you notice about this picture? What do you notice about it? How can we improve that? And more. And the other thing you can do on any of these image generators or text generators is on the tool itself, often you have the ability to give your feedback to the developers to say, I didn't like this because, or this was great, and this is why it was good. So your feedback actually makes a big difference. All right. I do have a link to the slides. Let me just exit here. I can get you that link. Let me just, trying to exit here. I do have resources here as well. So let me just, I'll copy my link and I can put that in there for you. So you can have a look at that. I'll put that in there for everyone. I've shared it with Sequoia. So Sequoia is going to be sharing it as well. But I added that to, oops, I'll add it to everyone as well. And enjoy the remaining sessions here at Sequoia, and reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn at Jen Artan. I would really like to connect with people and just find out other ways that you're using to create resources for your students, with your students, and more. All right.